Today I attended the national gathering of Unmarked Burials to support the search and recovery of grave sites where Indigenous children who attended residential schools were murdered and buried. I'm standing in a park next to Place du Canada, where right next to me, off camera, a sacred fire is burning. It was ignited on September 6th at 6 a.m. to commence the start of the conferences, and it will be put out on September 8th at 6 p.m. The conference series is 3 days long, and we were able to attend 2 events that were open to the press. There's a bunch of different types of events happening with people all across Canada amongst various different First Nations communities. Some of the events that occurred were panel events, as well as drum circles, the welcome ceremony that happened here, and survivors circles where survivors were invited to recount their experiences at residential schools. So we will show you a recap of the events that we were able to attend.
Journalists were not allowed to attend all of the events at the National Gathering on Unmarked Burials, but Local 514 was invited to a leadership panel event. The panelists included Chief Councillor Ken Watts of the Tsi Sha'at First Nation in BC, Manitoba Ki Ononoe Okeme Konak, Grand Chief Garrison Sati of the Pimicamac Cree Nation, and Grand Chief Mandy Galmasty of the Ground Council of the Crees in Iou-Ishti, Quebec. The panel was moderated by Mary Wilson, one of the 3 commissioners of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Panelists discussed approaches to discovering unmarked burials in their nation. After the introduction from Marie Wilson, Chief Councillor Ken Watts started the panel. He spoke about getting the answers of survivors and those who didn't make it home, and mentioned that as this panel is being streamed, many survivors are watching live online. He's mentioned that many tourists and people don't come to the reserve as a result of the negative image caused from unmarked burials, but that the community has been working with the government to change this view. He said that the area of ground survey is prioritized by survivor accounts and archival research, document sketches, photos, old aerial photos and maps, and traditional use studies, as well as community input. He said that a number of techniques are used to scan for burial sites. 17 unmarked graves have been scanned in the area through this method. Watts said that over 90 communities were taken to attend the Alberni Indian Residential School in the area. He said that many of the names were not even documented at the school. Watts told the crowd, as a leader, it feels that the weight of the world is on survivors. But he said that he's never felt so supported by survivors in his work, as well as Canadians asking how they can help. He said that the Canadian and British Columbia government has stepped up, but now is the time for churches and faiths to step up. Watts brought up one of the 26 calls to action, including the independent investigation into the RCMP. The RCMP was complicit in residential schools as they took children from community to the schools. Following Watts, Grand Chief Garrison Sati took the stage. He recalled the time when the news broke of the 215 unmarked graves being discovered in Kamloops. He said that across the nation we were shocked, but it's not something we didn't know, but that now Indigenous communities had evidence and proof of harm committed against their children. Sati said that 8 residential schools existed in the southern part of Manitoba. This includes Brandon Residential School, which he said was taken down. Sati said he's visited the site where the school once stood and conducted ceremonies with elders. Sati recounted another residential school, Turtle Crossing Residential School, where 40 children were buried. He said that his grandmother attended a residential school from age 6 to 16, and she was an orphan. He said that many he knew had family who attended residential schools. He said, quote, "None of us knew what went on there because no one talked. We assumed that they were there for education and academics, until recently, when horrific stories came out." Sati also brought up George Gordon Residential School in the area, which was the last residential school to close in 1996. Sati recounted that he recently spoke to a person who demolished the school and said that all they left was a bell, and that this bell serves to commemorate the atrocities that were committed at this school. Sati said that himself and others have written letters to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau because these are crimes against humanity that need to be addressed. He explained that these burial sites are crime scenes and they should be treated as such. He called on Justice Minister David Lanetti to immediately commence an investigation, but said that letters were not responded to. However, he said that he continues to press the government to ensure that these burial sites are protected. He said that grave sites need to be protected and preserved so that eventually people can go to commemorate their relatives. He mentioned that currently smudge burning is going on in these areas. He said that he's demanding protective steps to ensure that culturally affiliated decisions are made to preserve these grave sites. Satish shared his concerns for the way that human remains may be treated in these burial sites. He mentioned that in the United States, there's a federal law that requires those that are funded by the government, including museums, to first consult with First Nations and Native American communities to determine what happens with human remains. He said that such a law does not exist in Canada, and it should. We next heard from Grand Chief Mandy Galmasti. She said that a large issue that occurs when discussing addressing residential school grounds and unmarked graves is jurisdiction and responsibility. She said that a common story she hears across the country is a lack of funding. Galmasti recounted that she was a representative of Quebec in a delegation that traveled to Rome. The delegation consulted the Roman Catholic Church on residential schools and what direction they should take. She said that the purpose of this trip was not to ask for an apology, but to advise the Pope and his team when they come to Canada the protocols that they should take when meeting with survivors. She shared that a critique she had over the situation is that they didn't understand protocols and there was a lack of follow-up. She explained that this was truly not in the spirit of reconciliation. She shared that she did not provide a PowerPoint in this presentation, as she wants survivors to see this information first before anyone else. She identified that there in the crowd that day, a group of survivors were in attendance of the conference. Galmasti said that this work shouldn't be on the shoulders of a few, and that we must stand united in reconciliation. Galmasti concluded her presentation by reminding people that a key component needed in addressing these burial sites is government funding. She said that she's seen many colleagues giving presentations who are seeking donations. She critiqued this, saying that donations shouldn't be asked for. It should be provided by the government.